The more, the better. That's the society we live in. So if you're flying an airplane, two engines is better than a single, right? Right? Well, that may not always be the case. Watch as we discuss the pros and cons of having more than one engine. It's going to be a little bit more interesting than you think.
This is aviation, intrigue.
So, when you're booking those flights or boarding an airline, maybe to go on vacation, you're going to assume that that jet is going to have at least two engines, maybe more. We all take it for granted because for that size and that amount of people and baggage, a jet has got to have at least two engines.
Boeing 737 carries 150, 180 passengers, has two engines, but some of the bigger airplanes like the Airbus 380, the world's biggest jumbo jet, as well as the Boeing 747, which was flying until recently, they had four engines.
So, the more engines, the better if you need to go heavier and go further. And that's why those aircraft were popular in that time. And with taking for granted that you want to have two engines on a jet, maybe four is twice as good.
Boeing 747 was known as the queen of the skies, was flying. That was the most popular transoceanic, transcontinental way of traveling. And they required those four engines in order to carry the 400, 500 people in two decks. And when the Airbus 380 came, the same thing. They had more engines to carry all the payload.
Not only that, but having been on an A380 flying across the ocean, it did feel a lot better to have four engines rather than just two.
Yeah, well, in case you lose one, you still have three, I guess.
That's definitely the case. I think people feel a lot safer when there are more engines.
We'll get into that, what happens when you lose an engine later on. But the more modern airplanes, like the Boeing 777, the Boeing 777, or the 787s, they're wide body, big jets that carry a lot of passengers with only two jet engines.
A lot of people might wonder, well, four engines was so great for international flights. Why did they go back down to two? Well, the airlines run a business. They spend billions of dollars on aircraft, maintaining those aircraft, and fuel. And so, anytime they have an opportunity to get an advancement in more efficient engines that can haul the same loads and go the same distances, they're going to go for it. And that's why the 777 and the 787 became more popular.
Yeah, I believe there's two fundamental reasons why we don't have that many four-engine airplanes anymore. Number one is what we talked about, which is efficiency of these engines. The newer engines are designed with cost efficiency and fuel efficiency that they're able to carry similar loads without having four engines. That's number one. Number two, the market dynamics has also changed.
There are going to be trends up and down in the sizes of the jets that airliners do purchase every few years.
Lot of current day demand from airline companies appear to be in short to medium haul range. Either the CRJ, the Embraer type airplanes, which carry maybe 50, 60 passengers, or the Boeing 737s, the Airbus 320, where they carry maybe 150, 180 passengers. That appears to be the bulk of airline travel. And that's why the airlines are putting more money into those kind of airplanes.
You mentioned those aircraft that are very popular for domestic U.S. flights. You can traverse across the country easily on a 737 or a two-engine jet, and there's no problem. They're very popular. They're very efficient, and that's why you see those a lot more commonly than the four-engine type nowadays.
So going back to the Boeing 747, the four engines did end up costing the companies and therefore the passengers in some way.
It affects the costs of the flights. And while they were very popular when those models first launched, I think some of these came out 40, 50 years ago with the four engine wide jets. Their efficiency compared to their competitors went down, and the popularity went down a little bit to the point where the two engine jets were just as capable, like you said. And so those took over.
We did a show with a person that flies in cargo and long haul routes with Boeing 747. You should go watch that.
So, in terms of safety, you still have two engines on those airliners, and that's going to probably be the trend mostly going forward, especially for shorter haul flights and domestic flights. But what about safety? Are two engines going to be enough? Well, a lot of aircraft of that size, especially the air carrier jets, are designed to be able to fly on one engine. So if one engine fails, that aircraft can continue to fly, at least to the point where it can get to a landing, make a safe landing.
What about smaller jets like private jets with two engines? Do they have the same kind of issue?
Sure, most jets, whether they carry 8 people or several hundred people, like jumbo jets, are designed to have some capabilities, even if one engine fails. And so, a lot of them have the ability to take off if an engine fails at a critical time, as well as to do a go around if they have to turn around and land again. But a lot of that depends on the weight of the aircraft, the airport itself, and the make and model.
Now, when we say smaller airplanes with more than one engine, it could be a jet, it could be a turboprop that many people have seen, as well as just regular piston propeller airplanes.
Sure, in a real general sense, because a lot of people have flown airliner turboprops, and they also have similar capabilities of being controllable and flyable if one engine were to fail. So that's a good safety feature. And generally, the larger the aircraft, the more capable it will be should you have an engine failure. So when you get into smaller categories, their capabilities on two engines is great, and one engine, not so much.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about training. Obviously, if you're training to become a multi engine pilot, you have to train differently because flying an airplane that's meant to have two engines with one engine failed is very, very different than learning to fly with one engine and that's the only engine you got.
We get asked a lot at the flight schools about people interested in learning to fly, and they say, well, can we learn to fly a twin engine? There are small personal size aircraft with twin engines that maybe carry 4 to 6 to 8 people that people can use for personal travel, but that is a very advanced type of aircraft. So you generally start with learning how to fly a single engine airplane, and then you advance into what's called a multi engine rating, which will allow you to fly small twins.
So, what does the training for a twin engine look like? Why is that much more different than flying a single engine?
Well, the irony with the multi-engine training is that you spend a lot of that time flying around on one engine because the big concept with getting the privilege of flying twins is can you handle it if one engine were to fail? And that is something that people don't realize when they get into multi-engine training that that's actually the core of the training because of some of the safety issues and training required to do that.
So, circling back to how we started, is flying a twin engine airplane with one engine failed a significantly more difficult, if you, especially if you're not trained properly, to fly than a single engine airplane?
The answer is it depends. Obviously, if you're in an airliner with multiple pilots and multiple air engines, and one of those engines were to fail, that's a lot safer of a situation because of the capabilities of the aircraft and the fact that you have multiple pilots helping with that. That's a lot safer than, let's say, a single pilot in a smaller twin that is not as capable if you were to have an engine failure in that case. In that case, it can actually be quite dangerous, and that's where the training is so critical.
So, if you're training for a two engine airplane, and let's say you're not very confident or you didn't train properly, flying that could be much more dangerous than a single engine with just one engine.
That's definitely the case. If you're a pilot with flying a twin engine airplane and your training either was not complete or you didn't get refresher training, the worst time for an engine to fail on an airplane like that is just at takeoff or right after takeoff because you're at low altitude. You don't have a lot of room to maneuver. You're surprised. And one engine suddenly not operating means the whole aircraft is going to start turning with the good engine leading the way. And so you've got to be able to handle it from there.
So, that's like if I'm in a canoe with one other person and one person stops paddling, the canoe is going to turn on one side. That's kind of what you're talking about.
The same thing can happen in a small twin engine airplane if one engine were to fail. It will suddenly yaw over into the dead engine, and the pilot has got to be ready for that and to apply the correct controls in order to maintain flight. And in some smaller twins, you can't even climb. You actually have to keep flying straight ahead as best you can and get things under control. And that sounds like a pretty risky situation, and it is.
So, most people, I bet, think that I have two engines, and if I lost one engine, I still have 50% of the power to fly, and I should be okay, right?
If you're in something that's a little bit smaller than a big jet, that's not the case. You're actually going to lose a lot of capability to even maintain altitude or climb. And a lot of that depends on the size and strength and horsepower of those engines. And the ability to fly that on one engine definitely takes a lot of training.
So, learning to fly a twin engine, especially if one of the engines were to fail, is a significantly more involved in the training process than flying a single engine plane that most of us start with.
That's why they require training. So we talked about in previous episodes about flying single engine airplanes like we do every day, and what happens if you lose that engine. Well, you're definitely going to make a landing very shortly, no matter what. But we're taught to glide the airplane, to control it, look for a landing site, and that process is actually a lot simpler and can be safer than if you're in a twin engine airplane and one engine fails because of the controllability issues.
Not to mention the propeller that's not working or the jet that's not working is going to add extra weight and not help in flying the airplane. That's going to make it even more difficult.
Definitely. And then sometimes if you have a propeller turning on that dead engine because it's windmilling, that actually creates a lot of drag. And so it's trying to bring that side of the airplane down with the other engine running. And so you're supposed to follow the series of procedures in order to help try to balance that out, control the airplane, and actually reduce the drag on that dead engine by making that propeller stop.
So let's transition a little bit. How popular are small twin engine airplanes? How, and is that popularity trend changing?
Over the years, the popularity of twins for personal use has actually gone down, and that's been noted by some recent news we read about that Cessna Textron, a very large aircraft maker that makes everything from airliners to small training airplanes, has quit manufacturing a very popular series called the twin engine Baron. That was designed for personal use for cross country flying, and they are no longer manufacturing those as of this year. And that kind of speaks to the viability of the light twin market. They're not quite as popular these days. And when we talked about the advancements in engines, same thing happened to single engine aircraft. There are a lot of new single engine aircraft out there that are very capable and compete with twins for half the cost of a two engine airplane.
So this whole single versus twin is like a Coke and Pepsi type debate.
Yes, it can be. Some people still like to fly twins because of the comfort and the size and just having two engines. And so with the proper training, they can be really enjoyable to fly.
So what surprises me, and I'm sure a lot of people find this equally surprising, is that flying with two engines is going to add a significantly more consumption, fuel consumption, because you're flying with two engines. The cost goes up, the reliability problem goes up. You have annual maintenance now to take care of two engines. All these things adds up. So therefore, twin may not be the best choice for most people.
That's a really good point. When people think about the cost of maintaining, inspecting, putting fuel into two engines, putting oil into two engines, it's not twice the safety, but it can be twice the cost for keeping those engines up.
And these twin engines are, in general, not two times as fast as a single engine either.
A lot of people think you're getting twice the speed or twice the horsepower, but in the end, they're not going that much faster than, let's say, a speedy single engine. And so when you think about it, the dollars and cents don't always add up if you're comparing the two. So we compared the pros and cons of single engine airplanes versus twins. Did you learn anything new about the safety and cost effectiveness of having a twin engine airplane? Tell us your thoughts in the comments.
This program is for information and entertainment purposes and are not meant as flight instruction, legal, or medical advice.
This is Aviation.